And good afternoon, everybody. Steve Kornacki here at the big board. And guess what? We are now inside of 2 weeks until the big day. 13 days away now until Election Day, when we'll be right back here looking at all the races come in. This is our daily look at the state of play. We call it 218 because if you're a loyal viewer of this show, you know, or if you're just a politics junkie tuning in for the first time, you know, 218 is the magic number for control of the House. Whichever party ends up with at least 218 seats gets the House. For Democrats, of course, that means they're going to need to pick up a lot of Republican seats. They're going to have to pick off at least 23 Republican seats, a net gain of at least 23 from what they have now. That would get Democrats to the 218 mark. Republicans, certainly, they are playing defense. They are trying to contain the damage and try to hang on. So we've been trying to give you a sense every day of the latest numbers, the latest developments, the latest changes in the map and the math to figure out what's going on with this race for the House, to look at the Senate, too, a little bit. And we've also taken a little bit of a look at 2020 because in some ways 2020 has already begun. And, of course, we are joined every day by one of the smartest voices you're going to find, sometimes on the left, sometimes on the right, sometimes right down the middle, but the smartest people out there who are looking at all of these things, trying to figure out what that landscape is that's taking shape as we head into the midterms. So today we thought we would look at this question of one of the questions that's out there. It's a question of strategy for Democrats and for Republicans. We say Democrats, they're trying to play offense. The name of the game for them is they're pretty confident they're going to hold on to most of their seats. There's a few they got to worry about, but it's to play offense. It's to try to pick up, 24 Republican seats at least. For Republicans, as we say, it's to play defense. They're exposed in a lot of places, and it's to try to defend as many of them as they can to keep Democrats from getting the majority. Well, one of the issues that comes into play, especially this late in the campaign, is where do you put the money? Where do you move the money around? What district do you think is most important to have the money in? And if money is a scarce commodity, you have to start making decisions. Well, you know what? I want to defend both of these seats, but I can only afford to defend one of them, so I have to choose. If I'm a Republican, maybe I have to take out of this district and give to this district. They're very hard choices that campaigns and that the political parties have to make at this time of the race for the House. And when you start seeing how they're making these decisions, it starts to give you a sense of how the parties are looking at the state of play. So here's what we mean. Let's take you through a couple of recent developments in the last couple of days. Here's a headline just from a couple days ago. You notice it's from Georgia. The House Republicans looking to bolster Handel with a last-minute ad buy. That name sound familiar? Handel, as in Karen Handel. Remember, it was a little over a year ago. We were right here at this board in June of 2017. Special election in the 6th District of Georgia. Special election for a House seat. Karen Handel was elected in June of 2017 over John Ossoff, the Democrat. He had celebrities coming in for him. He had like $30 million behind him. Democrats thought they could flip that district. It's in the suburbs of Atlanta. But Handel was able to win that night by 4 points. Now she runs for the full term. She is being opposed. You see Lucy McBath, her Democratic opponent. And you remember this district. Again, it's just north of Atlanta. It's the suburbs. Think of like Cobb County. And the key to this district, if you remember this special election, you remember this story. The key to this district is in 2012, this is traditionally a Republican area, traditionally very Republican. In 2012, Mitt Romney, as a Republican running for president, won this district by 23 points. Total landslide. In 2016, Donald Trump got nominated, and the voters here in these suburbs, well-to-do suburbs, they were a little turned off by Trump. They were a lot turned off by Trump. He won the district by only a point. So that was a huge, huge drop-off from how Republicans have traditionally done. That's why Democrats thought in that special election they'd have a chance. They said, if this district is almost 50-50 now in the age of Trump, maybe an open seat, we got a shot. Well, the Democrats couldn't quite get over the top in that special election. But you see, it's still very divided right there in this district, enough that Republicans now, in the home stretch of this campaign, are dumping money into Georgia's 6th district to try to shore up Karen Handel. Republicans a little bit nervous. And when you talk about Republicans playing defense, this is probably the kind of district, given that Handel won that special election, given that they're exposed in a lot of other places, they probably didn't want to have to come in with a late infusion of money to make sure Karen Handel gets over the top. But that's a move Republicans had to make in the last few days. Here's another headline we had from the last couple of days as well. This one from out in Colorado. The National Republican Congressional Committee slashes remaining spending for Mike Kaufman in the 6th district. They're cutting him off. The national Republicans have been pouring money into this district for an incumbent Republican, Mike Kaufman, and now they're saying no more money. They're letting him sort of fend for himself. Why? No mystery at all here. This poll was just from last week. Not the first time we've seen numbers like this. Here's Mike Kaufman, the incumbent Republican, running 9 points behind his Democratic challenger, running under 40%. And this is a big theme we've been talking about, and I think could be a very big theme on election night. This district, the 6th district in Colorado, it's the Denver suburbs. Again, it's that formula here. This is an area, by the way, we're just showing you Georgia, where Trump barely won. In this district, Hillary Clinton won the 6th district of Colorado by 9 points. This is a 9-point Clinton district represented by a Republican. We've talked so much about that Democratic energy in these suburban areas. Democrats thinking this is their first line of attack. Any Republican representing a district Hillary Clinton won, especially if that district is in the suburbs, Democrats, that's their first line of attack. And here you go. This is exactly what Democrats have been hoping for. Polling that shows them well ahead here. And now Republicans basically saying, look, scarce resources, we're not going to spend them in the Denver suburbs in the final days of this campaign. One final one here on the other side. We're showing you Republicans playing defense, Republicans cutting their losses. Here's an interesting one. Republican group making a late play in Iowa, a seat once seen as lost. And what we're talking about here is the 1st district of Iowa. Rod Blum is this gentleman's name. He's been in the House since 2014. The 1st district of Iowa is interesting. It's northeast Iowa. Barack Obama actually won that district when he got reelected in 2012, and then he won it easily. Barack Obama, you can show you this I can write it down on the screen. I don't have a fancy graphic for you. Barack Obama won this district by 14 points when he was reelected in 2012. And then 4 years later in 2016, Donald Trump turned around and he won this district by 2 points. We saw those big swings. This is a 16-point swing. We saw those big swings from Obama districts toward Trump throughout the Midwest. This district, no exception. Blum, who's been a very controversial figure, sort of polarizing figure locally, he was reelected in a close one there, a relatively close one in 2016. But again, Democrats felt like given that this district was able to go for Obama by such a wide margin, Trump did surge, but he only won it by 2. Democrats had high hopes throughout the year that this is a district they would flip. They had polling. There's been public polling in this race that put Blum down double digits. What Republicans are hoping, we've talked about it on this show the last couple days, that surge of energy in the Republican Party, that surge of energy maybe in those Trump districts, those Trump parts of the country. Republicans are hoping it maybe has put Blum somehow back in the game here, where he looked buried a month ago. Maybe now, given the political terrain there, if things are repolarizing a little bit along those 2016 lines, maybe it gives a guy like Blum a shot. So you see some Republican money going in there at the wire trying to pull that one out. So again, these are the sorts of decisions financially that the parties are making right now. Tells you a little bit about how they see the battle for the House. It's a key factor, obviously, as we try to make sense of all of this. And I say I'm going to be joined by some of the smartest folks to help break this down. We've got one of them with us right now. Joining me now is McClatchy political reporter, co-host of Beyond the Bubble, Alex Rorty. Alex, thank you for taking a few minutes. And I wonder, you've been following these developments pretty closely in terms of where the money's being allocated, reallocated. Is there a bigger picture that's coming into focus for you when you look at the moves the parties are making?
Look, it's honestly hard to kind of weave a coherent narrative out of everything that we've seen. I mean, you just ran through it. There are places where it seems like Democrats are on the march. I don't think really anyone expected Georgia 6, like you mentioned, to suddenly come up and suddenly, both parties to start spending heavily there. But at the same token, Iowa 1 comes back online. And this was a race, look, that frankly Democrats thought was done. They were already counting this in the win column, at least many of them were. And all of a sudden they're having to go back in. And there is a sense that there is movement on the map, but it's not uniform necessarily. This isn't all benefiting Democrats, and it's not all benefiting Republicans. I think you said it, actually. It seems like that everyone is retreating back to their partisan corners in 2016 in the race between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. And that's where you see different movement. And some suburban seats, that's not really a great thing for Republicans. And certainly there are a lot of suburban seats in play. But there are still those Obama-Trump districts, places where President Obama won twice, maybe even won easily in 2008 and then certainly 2012, that Donald Trump then, there was a huge swing toward him. Another place like that, Illinois 12, a place Obama won. The New York Times, Siena, they're rolling live polls show that race, the incumbent Republican Mike Bost might be pulling away in that district, and Democrats have one of their prized recruits, Brendan Kelly, there, who seems to be struggling to gain traction. So look, it is for someone who spends most of their day trying to figure this out. I'll just be honest, it's just really hard to make heads and tails out of what's happening out there right now.
Yeah, and it feels to me too. There's almost I see almost three layers here. I guess where you've got these obvious Democratic targets where the Republicans in the district. Clinton won them in 2016. She won them sometimes by comfortable margins, and you're seeing a lot of polls like we just showed there in Colorado, where you're seeing these pretty clear Democratic advantages. Then what you're describing is Illinois 12, Southern Illinois, rural, and maybe there's a rally around the Republicans effect there. There's also that zone of sort of more suburban, but they still went with Trump. And Georgia 6 kind of falls, Georgia 7. There's a whole bunch that fall into that where Democrats need even more movement in the suburbs maybe than they got in 2016.
Well, and there are a couple of districts that come to mind in that gray area, if you will, that I think, if Democrats want to be sure of taking a majority on November 6th, they need to win one district. Pennsylvania's 1st district, which is a suburban Philadelphia district in Bucks County, which is routinely mentioned around this time of year. It's always seen as kind of a bellwether. There's a Republican incumbent there, Brian Fitzpatrick, brother of the former Republican Congressman Mike Fitzpatrick, who's running a very closely contested race against a Democratic candidate there. I also want to point to a district like Texas's 7th district, which is a Houston suburban district, and another place where it seems like things are static there right now, that it's very competitive. The candidates, Republican John Culberson, the Democrat Lizzie Pinnell Fletcher, are really fighting and clawing for every single vote there. And we haven't seen that kind of movement, and that makes me think that those are the kind of districts that Democrats, if they do want to win the majority, those are the districts that are really going to put them over the top if they're able to get there by November. Yeah,
you mentioned Texas's 7th, and I think I'd seen you tweet about this recently. I think you're on a podcast, and somebody said, I love this question too, pick one district out there of the 435, and if on election night you were just told the result of that one district, that would sort of be your own personal bellwether. Talk a little bit more about why you put Texas 7 in that category.
Well, it is, like you said, it is kind of this moderate suburban seat. Now, look, this is, the Houston suburbs have never been a competitive area for House races. This is an area that Republicans, by and large, just dominate, or certainly have in recent political history. But it is one of the kind of districts that suddenly, with Donald Trump at the top of the ticket, swung toward the party. I think Hillary Clinton either won it or lost it by 1 point, but you get the idea that it was suddenly, there was a big swing, and it was very competitive, not unlike Georgia 6. And it's just a question of, it's a little bit of an old question from 2016. And, okay, Donald Trump is not especially popular there, but are there enough of these longtime Republicans who they're not comfortable with Trump? But you know what? John Culberson's been an incumbent for years there now. We're comfortable with him. Maybe we don't like the direction of the Republican Party, but we still like him. And that's the vote. There's not, a whole lot of Democratic DNA in that district. It's something you hear about. If you remember the Pennsylvania 18 special election with Connor Lamb, he was able to score a real shock upset in a special election in February there. Well, part of the thing that might have been helping him out is actually there are a lot of long-time, especially Union First Democratic voters there. There's Democratic DNA. That's not the case in Texas 7. And I know that one of the reasons I pick it out, I actually grew up in Texas 7. My parents still live there. And I know the area a little bit. On one hand, it is kind of shocking to me that it would be a swing district, and it shows just how much the party's coalitions have changed in the suburbs. But, it's not quite there for Democrats. I know there are some Democratic strategists who do see that, though, as still a real prime opportunity.
Yeah, I've been waiting for an opportunity to talk about my home congressional district of Massachusetts 3, but I think I'll keep waiting through election
night. You're going
to
have to wait for that.
There's not too much going on there that's relevant to this question of party control. I want to ask you, too, about there's been a lot of talk this week about the issue of health care that Democrats have been running on. I think we can show here there was a study about what Democratic candidates across the country are stressing just in terms of the content of their ads. And there's, huge imbalance here by a 3-to-1 margin. Healthcare is popping up more than any single issue. One thing that occurs to me on healthcare is I think Democrats had hoped that this was an issue that would have particular resonance with those Obama-Trump voters. You know, folks who had been willing to vote Democratic before, for whatever reason, gave Trump a chance in 2016. They're not necessarily hostile to government. You know, they voted for Obama, and Democrats were hoping that would win them back. How do you see that issue of health care affecting Democrats and their ability to do that versus just the rally around Trump effect that we've seen in the last few weeks from his 2016 voters?
Well, I think you've hit on what is really one of the big and maybe most important unanswered questions for November. What issue really wins them over? Because Democrats, it's funny, I've been talking with Democrats for years about this, really ever since Republicans attempted to repeal Obamacare last year. And they have been consistent that, okay, look, when it comes time to run ads, this is what we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on pre-existing conditions. We're going to focus on the effect that the Republican health care plan would have had on seniors. And this is what we're going to talk about. And the amazing thing is, they're actually right? I mean, you just said the studies about that, Democrats are fixating on that, and it certainly seemed to be having a real effect. And I know Democrats are pretty proud of themselves that they've been able to stick with this message, while Republicans, I think it's fair to say, have really been kind of much more scattershot with a lot of their messages. The question is, after all that work and groundwork that Democrats put into health care, whether or not that is going to override the Trump effect. And what we've really seen since the Kavanaugh hearings, whether or not maybe a lot of these Democratic voters, you're right, they're open to more government intervention, they're open to more government assistance on economic issues like health care. But they still like Donald Trump a lot, and they still believe in him and his vision for the country, and that simply becomes more important. And I don't know, we don't have a great answer for that. I will say, I mean, you will see Republicans now, it's no accident. Most of their messaging is about health care, but from a more defensive posture, right? They seem to be responding to these ads. I mean, two of the most common attacks I think you see from the GOP right now, one being that the Democrats support a single-payer system. They won't say that, but they support the Democratic candidate supports a single-payer system, and it's going to hurt Medicare for seniors, right? The other attack is they support a universal health care system, and it's going to double your income taxes, and it's going to cost $32 trillion. I think there's a lot of skepticism in the Democratic strategist community that those attacks are effective, but it is the message that Republicans seem to be honing in on, and it seems to be a direct response to this effort from Democrats, if not to win health care, but to at least ease that advantage that they would have had otherwise, just enough that maybe voters think, okay, you know what, though, I still like Donald Trump. I have concerns about this, but I'm still going to vote for the Republican candidate anyway because he's with the president. Yeah,
it certainly sounds like Republicans are concerned about what they're seeing in some of their polling on to be stressing it like this. Let me close on sort of a bigger picture question and sort of curious where you come down on testing the sort of two extreme outcome ends for election night. So two sort of extreme possibilities here. One, let's just say giant Democratic wave. Democrats pick up more than 40 seats. It's a very solid majority when all is said and done. And at the other end of the scale, Republicans hold on to the House. Democrats don't even get to that 23 number. Which of those scenarios, the huge Democratic wave or Republicans actually hang on, which do you think is more likely right now? Do you have a sense of that?
I actually, if I had to say, I think it would be that Democrats fall short of winning majority. I don't feel especially strongly about that, to be clear, but I do think, and there has been a sense among Democratic strategists this entire election cycle where even as expectations publicly seem to get to a point where people just accepted it as a fait accompli that Democrats are going to take the House, a lot of the strategists looking at the races one by one, counting up how many they needed to actually get to a majority, have always been more pessimistic, always been more skeptical. Now, a lot of those same strategists, despite what we hear about the Kavanaugh effect, feel more confident today than they ever have before. So keep that in mind. But I think it is still a real possibility Democrats fall short. My range of possibilities is actually still just that. I think it's possible they fall short. I do think it's possible we could see just an old-fashioned huge wave, tsunami, whatever you want to call it, that also happens and Democrats do win 40 seats. There's just a lot we don't know. There's still a wide range of possibilities for November 6th.
Yeah, it feels to me, I know people Some people are still thinking about it a lot, but it feels to me a lot like the end of the 2016 campaign, where you could see Clinton, maybe she just runs away with this, but there is that narrow path for Donald Trump, and maybe he'll find that, and then it all revealed itself to us on election night. Alex Rorty from McClatchy, doing great work this midterm cycle. Glad we could get you on here. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you.
All right, and thank you for watching at home. Again, the countdown continues. 13 days away and counting now until election night. We will be right back here, same time, same place tomorrow, counting down to the midterms, looking at all the numbers. We will see you back here then, noon Eastern, tomorrow.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.